What is a superhero without supervillains to fight? Well, still a superhero, sure, but one that gets kinda boring to watch eventually if they can't find some worthy opponents to knock around. And when your superhero universe keeps growing and several heroes start banding together, the villains have to up their game accordingly. The MCU has featured no shortage of powerful baddies over the years, and there are no doubt more of them on the way since the movies aren't stopping anytime soon. But which ones are the most powerful? Let's go. Let's start with a recently introduced character that's on everybody's mind lately, Kang the Conqueror. Being the top dog time traveler of the Marvel Universe, Kang has conquered tons of timelines in the comics, and at any given point, there may be any number of time-displaced versions of him with various power levels and ambitions knocking around. Consider that the one who remains, the slightly more benevolent version of him we just met in the MCU, was capable of policing time itself, creating a timeless realm that renders Infinity Stones inert, and makes a whole organization of time cops worship a trio of robotic alien lizards, and one honestly shudders to think what a truly villainous version of him could do. But I suppose we'll see once Ant-Man Quantumania rolls around.
I am inevitable.
We can't talk about power without talking about Thanos. The Mad Titan established himself as the big bad of 10 years worth of superhero films by not only conquering countless planets, gathering the powerful Infinity Stones, and beating the snot out of just about any superhero that happened to stand in his field of vision, but he actually did succeed in his master plan of erasing half of all life in the universe. That is definitely no small feat, and given that it took practically every single superhero and all their allies to go up against him in an all-out war to eventually stop him for good, as well as the death of the one who started it all, Thanos has no doubt cemented himself as one of the most memorable, powerful, and iconic villains of this booming film franchise. Even if, strictly speaking, there are other beings that could potentially dwarf him in power. Not every single villain gets 2 3-hour movies to themselves, and while it's almost easy to forget that he even appeared since Caecilius did most of the dirty work, Dormammu possesses much more power than he ever got a chance to show in the first Doctor Strange film. Being the ruler of an evil realm known as the Dark Dimension, the ancient hothead is a massive magical powerhouse that always spells trouble on a massive scale when he shows himself in the comics. It's telling that he is one of the few beings in the MCU so far that the hero doesn't actually fight. Strange, who would be outmatched in an old-school wizard battle, ended up having to trap Dormammu in a time loop until he gave up out of pure irritation. But that means that good old Flameface is still out there somewhere. Yes, it's true. Mephisto has kind of become a universal punchline due to the sheer over-theorizing about his possible appearance in WandaVision, which ended up not happening. But that does not change the fact that he is a powerful Marvel entity that fans do want to see show up eventually. How powerful is he? Well, while he is not the actual Marvel equivalent of the biblical Satan, he's a powerful and conniving enough demon that he might as well be, and he is more than willing to play the part in order to dupe people into giving him what he wants. Being capable of granting practically any wish in exchange for souls, or other abstract concepts of good things in the world we love, Mephisto's power is vast. Plus, come on, how cool would it be to see one of our MCU heroes punch out the closest thing we have to the freaking devil?
Time in my existence, I am truly not alone!
Moving on from the devil to a god with a lowercase g as he's been described, we cannot overlook Ego the Living Planet, though that's a moniker he mostly uses in the comics where that's exactly what he is. The MCU, on the other hand, reimagined Ego as one of the Celestials, a race of powerful cosmic beings. Across adaptations, Ego has possessed powers almost as amazing as Kurt Russell's beard, and if Peter Quill had not have stopped him with his amazing Pac-Man powers, this guy would have recreated the entire universe in his own image, putting the capital G back in God. Plus, he sets a precedent for the future. If we can have a living planet, why not a living universe, like the Beyonder? Secret Wars is, after all, a very famous Marvel Comics arc, and if I may, seems like perfect material for future movies. Come on, Marvel! Let Beyonder run where Ego walked. While it took a while for the Fantastic Four, the superhero family that started the Marvel Comics universe as we know it today, to finally become part of the MCU. And while we don't know when or how they're gonna show up just yet, we do know that they will have no shortage of immensely powerful villains like the iconic science sorcerer Dr. Doom or a nihilist from the Negative Zone, but Galactus the Devourer dwarves quite a few of them, what with his whole planet-eating deal. I mean, this dude eats guys like Ego for breakfast. Literally. He would certainly be a hell of a thing to see on the big screen, especially if Marvel decides to depict him accurately this time, so, you know, we can wash away the stink from that cosmic fart cloud that 20th Century Studios gave us back in the day. What can I say? Smashing Mjolnir with one hand makes a hella of a villainous entrance, huh? Hey? Right. Hela definitely gave us a great show when she took the stage as the central antagonist of Thor Ragnarok, handing our beloved Thunder God what might be the most sound defeat that he's ever suffered in the franchise. But as powerful, stylish, and awesome as Hela was, some people tend to forget that there was an even bigger, badder mother in that movie, Surtur, the fire giant. Yes, Thor killed him in the beginning, but Loki brought him back with the eternal flame to lay the smackdown on Hela in glorious fashion, and then he died again. But if this guy ever returns from the dead, and this is superhero fiction, so he damn well might, the surviving Asgardians are in for a whole lot of trouble. Okay, so Age of Ultron might not be most people's favorite MCU movie for a variety of reasons, but that doesn't mean that Ultron himself wasn't a powerhouse. Being one of the most persistent of the Avengers' enemies in the comics, Ultron started out as a genius-level intellect with a robot body made by Marvel's top scientists and just kept upgrading himself from there, growing more and more powerful. It's just a shame that he wants humanity dead. Ultron rarely stays gone for long in the comics, given that he can always be rebuilt, and despite Vision's efforts, he could potentially poke his head back out in the MCU as well. Plus, he's one of the very few MCU villains who can lay claim to having killed an Avenger, albeit an unofficial one who was an Avenger for like a fourth of one movie, but it still counts, kind of. Given that he's been upstaged by many villains since his debut and that he just spent a full 6-episode series heavily nerfed in a realm outside of time, it is easy to forget that the trickster god, Loki, was one of the first major threats of the MCU. While everyone certainly faced their fair share of relatively human villains, their various conflicts were slightly more personal. Loki, meanwhile, started out trying to take over Asgard, and then made the Chitauri attack New York, necessitating the first gathering of the Avengers to stop him. With his vast magic, his willingness to make all sorts of deals, and his cunning, Loki was no doubt a dangerous villain, even if he has spent most of his time since playing double dutch with the line that separates good guys from bad guys. Marvel can play coy all they want. We know the X-Men are coming sooner or later, and like the Fantastic Four, they've got plenty of powerful villains to bring into the mix, such as Phoenix or Apocalypse. Though, with both of them having starred in big movies fairly recently, it seems unlikely that they're going to be brought in anytime soon. What does seem likely is that Magneto will. While yes, he's been in a lot of movies, he has not had main antagonist status for a while, and now seems the perfect time to let him shine again. After all, the Master of Magnetism is no stranger to pulling off incredible feats through creative use of his powers, and being able to control metal is gonna be a hell of a hurdle when most of your heroes rely on gadgets and armors to fight. As long as there are superhero films to be made, villains of all shapes and sizes are going to keep crawling out of the woodwork. And as impressive as some of them have already been, the comics feature plenty of massively dangerous bad guys who could easily take the spot as top dog in the future.